This is what I was afraid of. You challenge me, the master challenges you.
The 1990s didn't fail science fiction. Science fiction arrived too early for the 1990s. While audiences were still trained to expect simple heroes, clean endings, and weekly resets, a quiet rebellion was already happening on television. Writers were experimenting with long-term consequences, characters were allowed to break, not bounce back, stories refused to explain themselves neatly, and networks had no idea what they were holding. These shows were called confusing, too dark, too slow, too strange. Some were buried in bad time slots, others were canceled before their ideas could fully unfold. But here's the twist no one talks about. Nearly everything modern sci-fi television is praised for today was already being attempted back then, just without the safety net of streaming or binge culture. Themes like political corruption, psychological trauma, environmental collapse, moral compromise, and serialized storytelling were not accidents. They were warnings, and viewers weren't ready to hear them. If these series debuted today, they wouldn't be called underrated. They'd be called groundbreaking. Tonight, we're uncovering 10 science fiction shows from the 1990s that were dismissed, misunderstood, or quietly erased. Not because they were bad, but because they were ahead of the world watching them. And the final entry on this list didn't just predict the future of sci-fi television, it predicted how we watch television itself. Number 10, Space, Above and Beyond, 1995.
Hey, guys. AMF.
The war doesn't begin with heroism, it begins with panic. Humanity makes first contact and immediately realizes it's outmatched. The response isn't diplomacy or exploration, it's conscription. Teenagers are rushed through accelerated training, stripped of civilian identity, and fired into space wearing armor they barely understand how to use. The series follows a single Marine squad as they're deployed across hostile planets, unstable colonies, and deep space kill zones. These aren't chosen ones. They're kids, exhausted, terrified, and slowly hollowed out by missions that never seem to matter in the long run. What made Space, Above and Beyond radically different from other 90s sci-fi was its attitude toward war. There's no glory here, victories feel accidental. Death comes without warning. Characters you expect to survive don't, and the show refuses to pause for sentimentality. Trauma carries forward, guilt accumulates, survival feels temporary. Even the technology is bleak. Advanced fighters and AI-assisted combat don't empower the soldiers, they reduce them. The enemy remains mostly unseen, turning fear into a constant background hum rather than a visible threat. War becomes routine, that's the horror. When it aired, audiences didn't know how to process it. It wasn't optimistic like Star Trek, it wasn't flashy like space operas, and it certainly wasn't comforting. Network television in 1995 wasn't ready for a sci-fi series that treated combat like a psychological grinder instead of an adventure. It was canceled after one season, its story left unresolved, which somehow makes it feel even more honest. Years later, the show has been reevaluated as one of the earliest attempts to present science fiction as adult war drama. Long before prestige television normalized moral ambiguity, Space, Above and Beyond was already there, just too early to survive. It didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because television wasn't ready to look at war without fantasy. And next is a show that didn't focus on soldiers at all, but on something far more destabilizing. What happens when reality itself starts breaking down. Number 9, Strange Days at Blake Holsey High, 1999.
Why should she forgive him? I mean, if Vaughn got his way, there's no telling where Josie would be right now.
At first, it feels almost ordinary. A quiet boarding school, intelligent students, old buildings filled with long corridors and locked rooms no one uses anymore. Teachers talk about discipline, parents talk about grades. Everything looks normal until time stops behaving. Objects vanish without explanation. Entire days reset. People age overnight. Memories contradict reality. The adults dismiss it as imagination, but the students know better. Something is fundamentally wrong with the school, and every anomaly points to a hidden scientific truth buried beneath it. Each episode explores a different concept: quantum uncertainty, temporal loops, parallel realities, causality paradoxes. But the show never treats science as decoration. Every theory has consequences. Every experiment costs something emotionally. Curiosity isn't rewarded, it's dangerous. What made Strange Days at Blake Holsey High extraordinary was how much it trusted its audience. It didn't simplify ideas. It didn't rush answers. It allowed confusion to exist, encouraging viewers to think alongside the characters rather than wait for explanations. For a late 90s series aimed at younger audiences, that was radical. And that was the problem. Marketed as light teen sci-fi, the show was too complex for casual viewers and too quiet for traditional kids programming. It refused action beats. It refused villains. It refused certainty. As a result, it never found a stable audience and quietly vanished. Rewatching it today feels unsettling. The structure, tone, and themes feel closer to modern prestige sci-fi than anything from its era. It anticipates shows that would later build entire reputations on ambiguity, philosophical tension, and unresolved questions. And next is a show that pushed even further, abandoning mystery and replacing it with something heavier. A future where Earth itself has already lost. Number 8. Earth 2, 1994.
You are playing right into their hands.
Two little ships, Dyson.
Earth doesn't explode, it suffocates. The planet is poisoned beyond repair, and humanity knows it. The solution isn't salvation, it's escape. A new world has been discovered light years away, and the wealthiest, most powerful people on Earth rush to claim it first, branding the mission as hope for the future. Then everything goes wrong. The colonists never reach their destination as planned. Their ship crashes on a planet that looks beautiful from orbit, but feels deeply wrong on the ground. The air is breathable, the land fertile, yet the world resists them in quiet, unsettling ways. The planet watches, reacts, pushes back. What Earth 2 does differently is refuse to frame colonization as heroic. The settlers aren't pioneers, they're intruders carrying Earth's politics, greed, and hierarchy with them. Corporate agendas clash with survival. Ideals crumble under pressure. Even leadership becomes suspect, shaped more by power than morality. The planet itself becomes a character. Indigenous life forms aren't monsters, they're guardians. Nature isn't hostile, it's defensive. Slowly, the show reveals that Earth didn't just collapse environmentally, it collapsed ethically. And this new world may not tolerate the same mistakes. For network television in 1994, this was radical. Environmental collapse, disability representation, corporate exploitation, moral ambiguity. The show wasn't interested in easy answers or weekly resets. Consequences lingered, characters changed, optimism felt fragile. Audiences didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't adventurous enough for space opera fans. It wasn't comforting enough for family viewing. After one season, it was gone. But revisited now, Earth 2 feels eerily modern, a meditation on climate collapse, colonialism, and the illusion that humanity can simply outrun its own failures. It didn't fail because it lacked vision. It failed because it asked viewers to confront a future they didn't want to imagine yet. And the next show that took a different approach entirely, shrinking the scale, abandoning planets and wars, and focusing on the quiet horror of being alive but erased. Number 7, Now and Again, 1999.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you just spend $3 billion on this secret weapon?
A man dies in an instant. One moment he's living an ordinary life, a wife, a child, a routine that feels safe. The next, he's caught in an explosion that destroys his body beyond recognition. His death barely makes the news. Then the government intervenes. His brain is recovered and implanted into a genetically engineered body, stronger, faster, and classified. Officially, he no longer exists. His family is told he's gone. Unofficially, he becomes property, a weapon disguised as a second chance. What follows isn't power fantasy, it's grief. The man can watch his wife and daughter from a distance but can never speak to them. Every mission he completes pulls him further from the life he lost. His handlers promise purpose but offer no freedom. The more useful he becomes, the more invisible he is. What made Now and Again extraordinary was its restraint. The espionage plots mattered, but they were never the point. The real tension came from silence, moments where he stands across the street from his family, knowing that revealing himself would destroy the illusion keeping them safe. The show explored identity, bodily autonomy, and the cost of progress with a maturity television rarely allowed at the time. It didn't ask whether science could do this, it asked whether it ever should. Networks struggled to categorize it. Too emotional for sci-fi fans expecting spectacle. Too speculative for audiences wanting grounded drama. The tonal balance that made it special also made it fragile. It didn't last long, but revisited today, now and again feels like a prototype for modern prestige television. Character-driven, morally complex, and devastatingly human. It wasn't canceled because it lacked an audience. It was canceled because it arrived before audiences were trained to value quiet tragedy. What comes after is a show that didn't whisper its ideas at all. It shouted them, drenched them in darkness, and dared viewers to follow it into a future where hope had already died. Number 6. Dark Skies, 1996. History already happened, you just didn't know what was really behind it. Dark Skies opens in the early 1960s at the height of Cold War paranoia. Assassinations, covert operations, classified files. The era already feels dangerous. Then the show introduces its core idea. Every major historical event is connected to an alien infiltration that began long before anyone noticed. The story follows a young couple pulled into a secret war against the Hive, a parasitic alien species that takes control of human hosts. Politicians, generals, intelligence officials, anyone in power could already be compromised. Trust becomes impossible. Exposure means death. What made Dark Skies feel radical wasn't the aliens. It was the structure. Each episode rewrites real American history through a sci-fi lens. JFK, Vietnam, MKUltra, Black Ops programs. Conspiracy isn't background flavor, it's the engine of the narrative. And the show commits. Hard. There's no reset button. Characters age, trauma accumulates, loss sticks. The further the story moves into the decade, the darker it becomes. Hope erodes. The war feels unwinnable, not because the aliens are stronger, but because they've already won influence. For 1996 network television, this was risky. It demanded attention. It assumed viewers knew history. It refused to simplify politics or morality. There were no clean victories, only damage control. Audiences weren't ready. Marketed as an X-Files alternative, Dark Skies was far more serialized and far more pessimistic. Miss one episode and you were lost. Networks panicked. After one season, it was erased. But watched today, it feels shockingly modern. A proto-prestige conspiracy thriller that anticipated serialized storytelling, historical revisionism, and paranoia-driven sci-fi years ahead of schedule. Dark Skies didn't fail because it was confusing. It failed because it told viewers something uncomfortable. The invasion didn't come from the stars, it came through power. And the next sci-fi took both power and paranoia even further, stripping away aliens, rewriting nothing, and asking a quieter, more disturbing question. What if the end wasn't sudden, but slow, inevitable, and already underway? Number 5, Millennium, 1996.
3 of us, plus the private planes.
There's no spaceship, no future technology, no alien threat, just the end of the world approaching silently. Millennium follows a former FBI profiler gifted with an ability to see inside the minds of killers. He joins a mysterious organization devoted to identifying and stopping apocalyptic threats as the year 2000 approaches. At first, it feels like a crime show, then the tone shifts. Violence becomes ritualistic, motives grow symbolic. Evil feels organized. The crimes aren't random, they're signals, patterns pointing toward collapse. The closer the Millennium gets, the more the show leans into dread rather than mystery. What made Millennium ahead of its time was its refusal to explain everything. Episodes end without comfort. Evil isn't always punished, sometimes it just moves on. The show treats darkness not as an anomaly, but as a constant pressure shaping humanity. This wasn't science fiction in the traditional sense. It was philosophical sci-fi, obsessed with prophecy, psychology, and the idea that modern civilization might be built on denial. The future isn't destroyed by invasion or catastrophe, it rots from within. For network television in the late 90s, this was deeply uncomfortable. Episodes were bleak, atmosphere was heavy, there were no jokes to release tension. Viewers were asked to sit with dread week after week. Ratings struggled, tone scared advertisers, the show was constantly retooled before being canceled. But in hindsight, Millennium feels prophetic. Its themes mirror modern prestige dramas far more than anything airing beside it in 1996. It wasn't canceled because it lacked intelligence. It was canceled because it asked viewers to stare into darkness without blinking. And next, we leave paranoia behind and enter something far stranger. A show that didn't just push boundaries but ignored them completely, turning science fiction into something chaotic, profane, and impossible to categorize. Number 4, Lexx, 1997.
Yes. First, we will let ourselves be drawn into the star's gravitational pull. After that, and prior to the Lexx's molecular collapse.
The universe doesn't need saving, it's already broken. Lexx doesn't open with heroism or destiny. It opens with prisoners, outcasts, and mistakes. A cowardly security guard, a love slave engineered for obedience, an undead assassin who follows orders he barely understands, and a living, planet-destroying ship shaped like an insect, powered by appetite rather than fuel. This isn't a crew, it's a biological accident. What makes Lexx almost impossible to explain and impossible to forget is its complete rejection of sci-fi morality. There are no noble institutions, no enlightened federations. Power is grotesque, sexual, corrupt, and absurd. Entire civilizations exist only to be exploited or erased. And the show leans into it. Religion is exposed as control. Authority is performative. Survival often comes from cowardice rather than courage. The universe doesn't reward goodness. It tolerates it briefly, then moves on. Episodes swing wildly between comedy, horror, eroticism, and existential dread, sometimes within the same scene. In the late 90s, this was radioactive. Networks didn't know how to market it. Critics didn't know how to classify it. Viewers expecting traditional sci-fi bounced off hard. But what Lexx was actually doing was radical. It treated science fiction as punk expression, not aspiration. It wasn't asking what humanity could become. It was asking what it already was when stripped of myths. Visually, it pushed boundaries cable television wasn't prepared for. Practical effects mixed with surreal design. Alien worlds felt obscene and alive. Nothing looked safe, nothing felt sacred. Today, Lexx feels closer to modern boundary-breaking sci-fi than anything from its era. Shows that mix genre, mock power, and reject hero worship owe more to Lexx than they admit. It didn't stay underground because it was bad. It stayed underground because it refused to behave. And next is a show that went in the opposite direction. Not chaotic, not obscene, but quietly revolutionary, asking what happens when reality itself becomes programmable. Number 3, VR5, 1995.
Nothing like the feeling of flying in jet to push the limits of the old space-time continuum.
The internet isn't just a tool, it's a place. In VR5, a woman with a rare neurological condition discovers she can physically enter a digital network using virtual reality. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. She steps inside it, and once there, she realizes the system isn't neutral. It's watching, reacting, and manipulating the people connected to it. Each dive pulls her deeper into a hidden layer of reality where corporations, intelligence agencies, and unseen operators use digital space to influence human behavior. Memory can be altered, perception can be rewritten, identity becomes fluid. For 1995, this idea was dangerously early. The show wasn't about hackers or tech gadgets. It was about power. Who controls it, who weaponizes it, and who disappears inside it. Virtual spaces weren't escapism. They were battlegrounds. And the deeper the protagonist went, the harder it became to tell where the system ended and reality resumed. What doomed VR5 was subtlety. It didn't explain its concepts loudly. It didn't chase action beats. It trusted atmosphere, paranoia, and implication. Episodes often ended with ambiguity rather than closure, forcing viewers to question what they'd just seen. Audiences weren't ready. The internet was still novelty. Virtual reality felt like fantasy. Networks wanted clearer villains, simpler stakes, faster pacing. The The show vanished after one season. Viewed now, VR.5 feels uncannily prophetic. Surveillance capitalism, digital identity erosion, reality mediated through networks. It was sketching the outline of the modern world before most people had email addresses, bringing us to the top 2. Shows that didn't just predict the future, but redefined what science fiction on television was allowed to be, whether audiences were comfortable with it or not. Number 2, The Outer Limits, 1995.
It is said that madmen and fools are the children of God.
There is no crew to follow, no central hero, no promise that anyone survives. Each episode of The Outer Limits opens a door and then shuts it behind you. The series doesn't care about continuity or comfort. One week, it's artificial intelligence begging not to be shut off. The next, it's genetic experimentation rewriting what it means to be human. Aliens aren't invaders, they're observers, judges, or reflections of humanity's worst impulses. What made the 90s revival extraordinary was its moral cruelty. Stories don't resolve neatly. Characters make the wrong choice for the right reason, or the right choice with catastrophic consequences. Science isn't framed as progress, it's framed as temptation. Every breakthrough asks the same question in different language. Just because we can, does that mean we should? In an era dominated by long-running crews and optimistic futures, The Outer Limits went the other way. It isolated ideas, weaponized them, then left viewers alone with the aftermath. Episodes often end seconds after the worst realization lands. No relief, no reset. At the time, that made it difficult to love. It wasn't a comfort show, it wasn't escapism, it demanded attention and punished certainty. And because it was an anthology, it never built the kind of fandom networks rely on to survive. But revisited today, it feels terrifyingly current. AI ethics, bioengineering, surveillance, consent, post-human identity. The show wasn't speculating wildly, it was aiming directly at futures we now live inside. The Outer Limits didn't fade because it lacked vision. It faded because it refused to soften the truth. And now, we arrive at the top. The show that didn't just predict the future of sci-fi television, it built the blueprint, then waited for the rest of the industry to catch up. Number 1, Babylon 5, 1993.
To reach out to those who are afraid. If we can do that, then they're passing with.
Nothing about Babylon 5 was supposed to work. A 5-year story arc planned in advance, long-term political consequences, characters who evolve across seasons, wars that don't reset, decisions that echo years later. For early 90s television, this wasn't ambitious, it was reckless. Set on a neutral space station designed to prevent interstellar war, the show slowly reveals that peace isn't maintained by ideals. It's maintained by compromise, secrecy, and sacrifice. Empires rise quietly, democracies decay politely, heroes make unforgivable choices and live with them. What made Babylon 5 revolutionary wasn't scale, it was structure. This wasn't episodic sci-fi, it was serialized political tragedy disguised as space opera. Entire seasons function like acts in a novel. Characters introduced as comic relief become dictators. Idealists become collaborators. Villains believe they're right, and sometimes they are. The show tackled authoritarianism, propaganda, religious extremism, refugee crises, media manipulation, and moral surrender long before television treated those topics seriously. And it trusted viewers to remember, connect, and reflect. At the time, that trust was dangerous. Ratings wavered, visual effects aged quickly. Critics compared it unfairly to flashier shows. And for years, Babylon 5 was treated as a cult curiosity rather than a landmark. Then prestige television arrived. Suddenly, long arcs mattered, consequences mattered, politics mattered, viewers expected complexity, and looking back, it became obvious. Babylon 5 wasn't behind, everyone else was late. It didn't just predict where sci-fi was going, it predicted where television itself was going. That's why it sits at number 1, not only as an underrated 90s sci-fi show, but as proof that being ahead of your time often looks like failure, until history catches up. Now it's your turn. Which of these 90s sci-fi shows deserves a full rediscovery, and which one do you think modern television still hasn't caught up to? Drop your pick in the comments, and if you love uncovering sci-fi that was too smart, too dark, or too early for its own era, Like, share, and subscribe to Vintiverse, because the best futures are the ones they tried to bury first.